evening, everybody. I want to first thank you guys for attending. I want to thank you for seeing the need to want to understand what I assume most of you are going to be a southbound PCT through hiker, but seeing the need to understand what the conditions will be like that you're going to stick yourself into. That's exactly the way it goes, because as soon as you leave home, now you're kind of like a stranger in a strange land, and you're putting yourself way the heck out, into the wilderness, so to speak. And if systems don't work, systems like, shoes, pack, cooking, clothing, whatever, you've got a long way to go to make a change. So that's the reason for these presentations through Carol and thru-r, is that you be safer out there, that you be wiser out there, and through discussion and presentation. And we'll get into tomorrow how to deal with the problems that are intrinsic to when your start date is. So it's not only knowledge, but it will also be a skills discussion. Before I get into it, let's see. I kind of want to take a what I call a 30,000 foot view of the whole thing. Traditionally, well, probably more historically, the PCT was conceived, obviously way back when, but as a trail that kind of connected two existing trails and a third, but it was a long ways away. So it was the Pacific Crest Trail that ran up the center of Washington, north to south, obviously. The Oregon Skyline Trail, which did the same thing, running north-south up the center of Oregon, up the spine of the Cascades. And then the pre-existing John Muir Trail down in the center of the Sierras, running north-south along that spine. In general, you have two sets of mountain chains, the Sierra and the Cascades, where one ends and the other begins. Would be both best marked as Donner Summit or Donner Pass, Highway 80, between Sacramento and Reno. That is where, as a southbounder, you will leave Northern California and climb up gradually into the Sierra and continue your southbound journey. So historically, it was conceived just as a way to connect these three trails and create a longer route, maybe from border to border. There was a gentleman a long time ago by the name of Warren Rogers, and Warren Rogers he had a lot of things going on, but he was involved in scouting the trail. And with his Boy Scout groups and his little kids, he created a relay team that did sections of the proposed route. No, there wasn't a proposed route. They did sections of what could be a proposed route, working with, I'm not the historian, so I wanted to say Gifford Pinchot, but I don't know if that's true, but I can't remember who. There was a prime lady, there was a lady up in, I want to say Washington, who had the brain idea. And then some of the heads of the Forest Service and so forth worked with Warren Rogers to scout a route. I actually did get a chance to meet Warren, and he did help me with my planning, but my planning, keep in mind, was back in 72, 73 for my 1974 thru-hike northbound. Now, traditionally, it's always been a northbound kind of conceived thing, and you'll read guidebooks about it and mileages that go, well, now both ways, but originally it was south to north. But the first guy who did it, Eric Ryback, in 1970, so a few years before me, went southbound. So that's what caught my eye. This guy went southbound, very dramatic, amazing book. Later found out it was written by a ghostwriter, and he didn't do all the route. But anyway, it drew our attention, and a lot of us, to doing the thing. So the National Geographic started picking up on the idea and documented it. And what was it, 72 or something like that? Came out with a book in 73. But anyway, that was covering a southbound journey. So that was how it started. but that's not how it seems to have become popular, because more people go northbound than southbound. Outside of history and tradition, some of the main things, still in the 30,000 foot overview, some of the main things have to do with the conditions on the ground and the ground itself, and how those two affect the strategy that you have to employ or not in order to do this trip. Now, unfortunately for you guys that are southbound, you're going southbound. So what you're really having to do, because of the amount of snow in the Pacific Northwest being basically, I'm going to consider it the state of Washington, whereas the North Cascades, if I refer to them, they're kind of, there is a North Cascades National Park, but I kind of refer to the North Cascades being the more rugged, jagged half of Washington. So from Snoqualmie Pass north, I like to call the North Cascades one of the most memorable, outrageously beautiful sections of the trail. Of course, second to my favorite, which is the Sierra, but then that's just me. So anyway, you're starting in very steep terrain that's loaded with trees, on a trail that likes to either be on the ridges or in the valleys, and spends a great deal of time in between. So you're going to be following a snow-covered trail, at least in part, while you traverse very steep side slopes, and that with trees below you and all around you, such that if you should fall, which is typical, you're going to crash into a tree or go over a cliff. And both of those I've been involved in one way or another, and that's a whole nother story. So that's the 30,000 foot view. A little bit of history, a little bit of tradition, issues of weather and snow, and the terrain. And we'll hammer that out here more in a minute. So what I'm going to do is now I'm going to get into the pros and cons, and then I think I'm not going to spend as much time as I have been for the northbound folks, because after pros and cons, I'm going to talk about the strategy and how some of this stuff that makes it a pro or a con is affected by the environmental conditions, which then affect your strategy. So let's dive in. The overview and the thing, when people say, I'm going southbound, my first reaction is, okay, do you know what the conditions are like up there? And do you know what the terrain's like up there? In other words, you have steep snow from the start. Now, some things I'm going to just keep repeating. I used to teach college level EMT classes, and the more you repeat, you might upset some folks, but actually they do remember a little better. So I repeat some things. When I'm talking environmental conditions, I'm not so much talking about weather falling on you, because you're going to be starting either in June, July, or August, depending upon the intensity of the preceding winter. So I'm not so much talking about weather falling. That's kind of late in the summer. You know, North Cascade, yeah, sure, it's summer, but there's a hell of a lot of snow that still hasn't melted off. I'm more talking about the conditions on the ground. Where the rubber meets the road is where your shoe supposedly should have enough traction to hold you to the side of a hill while you're standing on steep snow. So that's really the safety factor that I'm most worried about when you say, I want to go southbound. And I go, well, that's cool, but do you understand what you're going to be walking on? The later, and I'll say this again, the longer you wait to start, the more obviously dry trail you'll have and the less snow you'll have. So that's great. But there are some serious cons, if you will, that those environmental conditions being present and you're choosing to delay your start will force you into, and that's not so fun, like going faster and having deadlines down in the Sierra, because there's an issue called first snow. Whether you're going northbound and you have first snows in Washington to watch out for, or you're going southbound and you have issues of first snow in the Sierra to watch out for. So that's what I'm talking about when I'm talking about first snows. So environmental conditions that you'll be on are affected by when you start, same as northbound, except for the window is a little different. if there is a light winter, so it'll be like a drought winter in the Pacific Northwest, what causes that is that all the storms, instead of going into Washington, Oregon, which is kind of classic, and you're seeing it right now with there being a high pressure system. High pressure means fair weather. High pressure systems are pretty strong. And when they park themselves, or when it parks itself, only takes one, unfortunately. Well, maybe whatever, only takes one. And when it parks itself off of Oregon and California, it blocks all the low pressure systems carrying the precipitation from coming into California and Southern Oregon. So therefore, we have the conditions we've got right now, where we haven't had any precipitation in the form of rain or snow since the end of December. Now, it does change. If the high pressure system has a tendency to park itself off of Washington, then the storms are going to go down through, Southern Oregon and California, and we get a ton of snow. So when you consider which direction to go, please look at and follow the weather patterns. Which way are those low pressure systems going? Are they trending north, going through Oregon and Washington, bypassing California? Or is the winter showing storms trending southerly into California? Sometimes we will get, I say we because I'm in Southern California, and Carol's not far away in Southern California as well. We'll get a heavy winter, and Oregon and Washington will get a so-so winter. Most of the time, it's the other way around for some reason, probably because the highs do like to park off the California-Oregon coast, and so all the storms go north. So that's the kind of stuff you have to consider, all having to do with environmental conditions on the ground. We're not talking about weather coming down. We're talking about the stuff on the ground you have to stand on. Snow is frozen water, therefore slippery. Put the snow on a steep angle, and it becomes pretty risky. Risks for falling and sliding and tumbling and hitting things and getting seriously hurt and then flown off the mountain. If you, let's see, okay, wait a minute. It doesn't mean, okay, here's the, I want to get into it and I'm trying to hold myself back. If there's a drought winter, the typical start time is mid-June. Drought winter equals mid-June. Okay, put that in your head. Normal winter, a normal winter is when, say, the ski areas are really happy. They're running until Easter. All the forecasters are going like, okay, we've had so many inches of snow. Of course, if Tahoe gets a heavy winter, it's 500 inches. If Mount Baker gets a normal winter, it might be 500. So they get more snow up there. So if they get a heavy winter, you're dealing with major feet of snow on the ridges, on the trails, all that kind of stuff. It takes longer to burn off. So therefore, a light winter starts mid-June. Normal winter may start around the 4th or 7th, in other words, first week of July. To confirm this, I advise all of you to check in with the mountaineering shop in Mazama, Washington, called Goat's Beard. All of their employees, however many they have, are fairly fanatical backcountry skiers, snowshoers, outdoors experts. And this place, Mazama, Washington, is right next to Hart's Pass. So these guys are going to know what your start conditions are really like, not based on snow sensors, but based on their own being up there. So do check with them. They'll also have a feeling for how the winter's going. So if you call them in January or February and you say, how's it going? And they say it's been goofy, or you know what, all the storms are coming through here and missing California, you're going to get the real boots on the ground info. Now, if they get a heavy winter up there, you're going to be starting closer to August 1st. And you're going like, oh my God, Ned, if you start that late, how can you get through the Sierra in time before first snows stop you in your tracks? Now, let me just define what that means. First snows have to do with the presence of powder snow. Fresh snow falls in the form of powder or snowflakes and piles up. It takes sun and time for it to settle, percolate down, and refreeze into what we call, or is called, a consolidated snowpack. So it consolidates. When it's consolidated, it's hard enough to walk on as long as it refreezes every night. Now, I know I'm throwing a lot of stuff at you, but do pay attention to more things than, hey guys, I'm going for a hike on the PCT. I'm going to start southbound mid-June because that's what everybody says. And I haven't a clue. I haven't done my research, but yay, go me. No, do your research. Carol's laughing. That's good. So you've got to pay attention to more than just storm trends. Very important. Are the storms going through California? Are they going up into Washington and bypassing California? How much snow are they dumping? Are they having a light winter, a normal winter, a heavy winter? But also, what is the spring thaw doing? Now, we talked about this for the northbounders, so let's just kill it briefly for you guys that are going southbound. When the thaw starts is based on when the overnight temperatures rise above freezing and stay there. So somewhere along the line, yeah, you can use your online monitoring stations to figure that out. And that's fairly good if the monitoring stations are close to the trail. And in the Pacific Northwest, they are. In the Sierra, they're not. Because the actual location of the trail in the Sierra is much higher than most remote monitoring stations can weather. Let's just put it that way. So for you guys southbound, that's great because your numbers that you're going to see on the sensors, the remote sensors, say on Stevens Pass, Snoqualmie Pass, White's Pass, wherever they are, I only know a few, but I'm sure there's more, will probably be fairly accurate, telling you how deep the pack is. But keep this in mind. If the pack is still being refrozen every night because the overnight temperatures are below freezing, then you can walk on top of it. I don't give a hoot well, I don't care if the snowpack says there's 12 feet, 20 feet. It doesn't matter. If it's frozen, consolidated, refrozen every night, you can walk on top of it. So there's no wallowing, there's no snowshoeing. It's really easy. You just have to have crampons and a good way to self-arrest and a good way to maintain your balance, and you're golden, and we'll get into all of that tomorrow in detail. So watch the storm track, north or south. Watch how much snow is present on the sensors, but realize it doesn't matter as long as it's frozen. Now, if you wait a while to start your hike, the thaw maybe has started. And when the thaw starts, then the snow turns to mashed potatoes, and there is an element of wallowing and post-holing and struggle where you're wet and you're cold and you're on a steep. If you want to stay strictly on the trail, you're on some steep side slopes, or you're up on exposed ridges, or you're trying to figure out how to get through the trees because the cut in the trees where the trail is very narrow. And when it's all covered in snow, you can't tell if the trail goes through this gap over here or that gap between the trees over there. So hiking on snow in trees early, when there isn't a boot track, in other words, a ton of people have gone before you who have strictly followed the trail, and all you got to do is follow their footprints. When that boot track is there, you're golden, at least if you want to follow the trail. If it's not there, you're going to have to do your own navigating, and that's kind of rough, especially when you can't see very far. So navigation is a con, and we'll get into that in a minute. But I wanted to just reinforce that you need to keep an eye on certain things before you start. And if the Pacific Northwest and you're southbound and you have a schedule, a start date of, whatever, say you pulled July 1st and it's a heavy winter, you're going to have a kind of a double whammy problem because July 1st is going to be during the thaw. So there's going to be a lot of soup to wallow around on until there's a boot track packed in. Yet it's kind of late. You might have to hurry a bit more than if you were able to start 2 weeks earlier, mid-June. So all of you guys who are southbound, I'm sure now will start rooting for a drought winter, but unfortunately the Pacific Northwest has been hit with a fairly heavy winter till recently, where I'm getting rumors that it's tapered off a little bit and maybe it's going to be more of a normal winter. So if you pulled or requested a June start, you might think twice about it, with that one caveat that if the ambient temperatures are still below freezing at night, you're golden if you have the mountaineering skills to stay on your feet on steep slopes. Now, when I say steep slopes, I'm talking about anything that's greater than, in steepness, what would make a good toboggan run. Most people don't know what 30-degree slope looks like. It's different from a 20-degree, different from a 45-degree. So I have found that in teaching people out on the snow in the Sierra every year for 2 months in May and June, the northbound PCT thru-hikers, that it's easier to say, well, does that look like it make a great toboggan run? Do you think you'd want to like get a disc and go out there and just have a hell of a good time? Well, then it's probably about 20 degrees or more. If it's 30 and above and the snow is soft, you have avalanche concerns, the numbers are technically different. I'm trying to keep this something simple to understand. 20 degrees, great toboggan run. 30 degrees, I got some avalanche worries if the snow is powdery or if the snow is really wet and soupy and it wants to move all by itself. And above 40, you're really looking at quasi-mountaineering, quasi-steep, serious, scary stuff, like the chute of Forester, if you've ever been there northbound in the spring. I've measured all this stuff. I used to be a ski patroller for years in the Lake Tahoe area, and you learn about avalanche maintenance and monitoring and avoidance and rescue and all that good stuff. And we carry slope meters, and the slope meters, you stick on your ski or your pole and lay it on the surface and just see what the degree rating is, and that tells you how much you should be worrying, or maybe you should get out of there. But anyway, that's tomorrow. That's tomorrow. So the primary concerns, okay, my point there was, if you're trained, you can go earlier, but you better have your act together. You'll have more snow, but it won't matter if it's frozen. It will matter if it's soft. The deeper the snowpack, if it's soft, the more you're going to post hole, maybe to your hips, maybe to your waist. How do you get out of it? It's a real affair. We'll talk about it tomorrow. So if you're savvy in steep snow travel, and if you're prepared for hard surface conditions because it's being refrozen every night, yeah, go ahead and start early, as long as you're good with navigating and all that other stuff. But if you're not, you don't want to start early at all. You want to start probably as late as you can. That way you'll have less snow on the trail and more dry trail. And I'll get into that. So we've kind of killed it as far as what to be concerned about. I do maintain an outline because I have a tendency to get off on wild tangents, because I want to tell you as much as I can about what it's really like out there and what you're going to actually see, and then what you're going to have to deal with in a safe manner so that you go home, in one piece. So I get on tangents, and then I have to ask you guys what the heck I was talking about when I went off on the tangent. Okay. All right. So ideally, you want, because there's going to be some snow, you want to have a boot track in the snow. When I say a boot track, I've already mentioned it's made by everybody else who's gone ahead of you. But what they do when we walk in a plumb stance. We like our heads over our feet. So if the slope is like this and I'm standing plumb, my feet are going to be level, 90 degrees to my body. So if a whole bunch of people stampede through a certain area, that trail they make is going to be level, even if it's on an angle. So boot tracks are great because they enable you to get by with a traction device called microspikes or something like it. The lightweight traction devices aren't as durable and aren't as stable on your feet. But if there's no side slope, side slopes cause a lot of traction devices to simply slide off your feet. And that's not good, because suddenly now you're on a steep side slope and you have no traction and down you go. So that's not good. But if there's a boot track so you can walk on a flat side to side surface, although you're on a steep side slope, you're golden. Microspikes will work just fine. If you're in there before a boot track is established, if you're an early forerunner for the season, I would highly suggest you bring hiking crampons, for example, and I don't like using brand names. I rather talk design, but that would be for tomorrow. but hiking crampons like Catula's KTS or K10s, where they have metal that actually wraps up along the side of the foot so you can't slide off of the metal platform. That's the best, because you're going to be walking on a steep side hill and you won't have a boot track. So all of the force in your foot is going to be going sideways. It wants to go in the direction of the hill, unless, of course, you can create little pads for your feet, by kicking and scratching and stomping and stuff, so that you can have a flat platform to stand on. But to do that, if the surface is hard, you're going to need something more like a hiking crampon rather than micro spikes held on by a rubber band. It doesn't work. So you also want, for ideal conditions, you want to have as little snow as possible. Duh, we covered that. And the most dry trail. The problem is, if you're early and there's been a drought winter, so there's less snow, but you're early, there's no boot track, so navigation becomes an issue. So have one of these. So have your Garmin inReach with a screen so that you can see the map, see where you are relative to the trail, and then you can choose where you want to navigate to based on the conditions, inclines, soft spots, whatever in the snow, that you can safely navigate based on your skills, because you don't have to be on top of the trail. If you're not on top of the trail, it doesn't mean you're lost. It means the trail's over there, but it's safer for me to go this way. And that's fine. Just always know where you are relative to the trail. So carry a GPS, carry a topo map. We'll get into all that, because these are the techniques you're going to need to use to be safer out there. So that's tomorrow's discussion. The last thing for ideal conditions is the more dry trail, the more miles you can do. If you start even in July or closer to August, because of the amount of snow, your hiking window is going to shorten, because your deadline is the first snows in the Sierra. Once the powder starts falling, it can stop you in your tracks. It can technically bury you. I don't care if you're northbound or southbound. First snows are a bookend. If you can squeak through the Sierra before the first snows, then you're golden. Southern California doesn't have a whole lot of worry. A lot of the storms bypass it completely. Yes, it has ski areas down here, but they don't always run every year. Depends upon how much snow they get. This year, because of December's major dump of major feet, what was it, 19 or something feet? Yeah, they're running, and they're still running on 30 inches of consolidated snow. Okay, so that's what you're really looking for ideally. You want to start late so there's more dry trail, but you can't start too late, because then you got to hurry. Really, you got to do bigger miles from the get-go. So let's get into pros and cons. So that was kind of a little bit of explanatory, and we're doing good on time, so that's wonderful. The pros of going southbound. One of the things I hear most from my students when we're out on the trail and we're yakking it up about which way to go, and I'm just training them, so they have yet to decide in some cases, is that, they got to hang out with school until like June when they graduate. Well, look, hey, you can start southbound in June or July. So people go southbound for that reason. So that's an advantage. You can start later, say after school gets out. Another advantage to going southbound is you've got an entirely different view. Northbound, you're looking north, sun's at your back. That can be really an advantage because you're not looking into the sun all day going northbound. Going southbound, I didn't even list it. I should have. You're looking on glare off lakes, glare off of various things, as well as direct sunlight is in your face all the time. Now, thankfully, there are a lot of trees up in Oregon and Washington. You don't actually break free of trees until sections of Northern California. You get out in the open. Donner Summit south, you're fairly exposed, unless you're down in a valley. So check your maps. But you'll have issues of direct sunlight. But guess what? By then, 2 months, 3 months into your trip, you're pretty tan. You don't really have a problem. But do remember, high altitude, wear some decent glasses. Snow blindness or even just sun blindness off of reflection off the water can burn your retinas, according to my eye doctor the other day. I was grilling him on the subject. Anyway, so a different view, and you can start later in the year. That's good. Sometimes people want to hike more solo. They want to hike with fewer people around. Well, you have fewer people going southbound compared to northbound. It's a huge difference in number. I don't exactly know what it is, but I think it's probably a tenth easily of what goes northbound is what's going southbound. The numbers are increasing, but if you want to have a more of a quiet hike with less folks all around you going the same direction, southbound would actually be an advantage. Now, a disadvantage is perhaps that all the northbounders, when you suddenly meet up, you're going to be bumping into northbounders all day long, every day. So you're going to lose your quiet solitude experience once you intersect with the northbounders. There's also fewer public. Now, you got to realize, if you're starting after a normal winter, July 4th, there's going to be a lot of people up there. It's summertime. Schools are out, summertime. But Labor Day isn't far away, and you're still on the trail. All the kids go back to school. You still got September, October, November, maybe even December, depending upon when you started and your speed and what you can do. So you're back into kind of a solitude experience. Fewer people out there, except for in July and August in the Pacific Northwest. August is really the ideal month for up there because there's even less snow. So don't freak out if there's a heavy winter and you see that really you should start around August 1st because they got, major snow, and you're thinking, oh my God, that's late. But it's an advantage in some ways, disadvantage in others, and we'll talk about that. Another advantage is in the Pacific Northwest during the thaw, because you're going to be up there during the thaw when everything's melting and there's lots of water in the creeks. This is a really old trail in part. The Cascade Crest and the Oregon skyline have bridges for the most part. Yeah, you'll have to go through a couple. And depending upon whether the bridges are washed out or avalanched out during the winter, but they do a pretty good job with their bridges up there. So you won't have the creek crossing issues that the northbounders have in the Sierra. So there's another advantage. Another one has to do with bugs. Everybody goes, how are the bugs? Mosquitoes. In the Pacific Northwest, you've got even worse critters, the biting flies and the horse flies. Some of those guys are big and ugly, and they take a chunk of skin out, but they're stupid. And they're not as quick as the mosquitoes, but and you can flick them off and you can kill them and all that kind of stuff a lot easier, but don't let them bite you. So bug wise, you're starting kind of a little late, maybe. So you should have fewer bugs, especially in the nasty state of Oregon, because when Oregon has lots of standing water and puddles and all the snow is melting and stuff, there's mosquitoes everywhere. Hopefully you'll slide through Oregon kind of on the off season of that. I'll explain this in a minute. It has to do with your timing, and I'm going to get into that in a minute. So another advantage to southbound is it's a little cooler. You're not starting in the high desert of Southern California. You got snow, but like I tell all of my students going through the Sierra in May, especially June, you can be on 20 feet of snow, but it can be 60, 70 degrees out. The sun is intense because you're out there during the thaw. So you're really boiling up, and you're trying to wear as light a clothing that covers the most of your body and so that you can be out there. Thankfully, southbound, you're in trees a lot, so therefore shade. It's cooler. Scooting through Oregon, cooler in shade. You're not going to get more sun until Northern California. And that'll be a couple months into this. I have to do this now. I was going to explain it later, but we're on it. In general, Washington's a month, Oregon's a month, Northern California's a month, the Sierras are a month, Southern California is a month and a half. So you're looking at a 5.5 month journey. So if you say you start the 1st of July, because it's I should kind of stick to the plan. If it's a drought winter, I don't think this one's going to turn out to be a drought winter. So let's just try a normal winter. Say you start around July 7th. So July 7th to August 7th, you're in Washington in general. August 7th to September 7th, you're in Oregon. So you get out of Oregon and Labor Day, thereabouts, unless you can really kick up the speed, and that'll help you later. So this is just a vignette of in general. So Northern California is September 7th to October 7th. Northern California ends around Donner Summit, Highway 80. You hit the Sierra for a month, so that's October 7th to November 7th. Kind of getting iffy on the fresh snow falling. Got to be careful. This is after a normal winter. So you're getting a little dicey anytime in the Sierra after November 1st, I would say. If you can clear the Sierra by November 1st, put that in your head, you're probably only going to get dustings of snow. Early snowstorms dump less than a foot, usually. However, in the Sierra, you can't say never or always. You just never know. So in general, because I used to teach classes to the middle of October in the High Sierra, we get dustings, 4 inches, 8 inches. You know, it usually melts off once the sun comes out. Not a big deal, unless, of course, the ambient temperatures at that time of year are below freezing at night. So any snow that melts during the day now is going to freeze on the trail, and you're going to have ice on the trail. Well, clearly that can be avoided. Just walk around it. So just saying, you're going to have some issues with chances of snow and chances of ice on the ground the later you run into the year when you're going to be in the Sierra. So the rule of thumb when it comes to ski areas in the Sierra, they like to try and open by Thanksgiving. Doesn't happen very often. So that's really your indicator that this is it would be a rare event for you to get nailed by powder snow in the Sierra before Thanksgiving. But nevertheless, you have a long way out. You're kind of remote. If you get buried under 2-3 feet of snow, it's going to take longer for you to get out of there. You're going to have to wait for a while for the snow to consolidate. It's not going to melt off all that fast. And so there are going to be major delays. So you want to avoid the powder snow, but try and be out of the Sierra by November 1st. And then you've got a month and a half in Southern California. So that means you're going to be ending right around December 21st-ish. Probably all alone. Most people have issues, and I'll get into this as the con side, with loneliness and lack of other people to have fun with and talk with. And it is an ordeal. And you're pushing a little bit because you got to clear the Sierra. So you've always got that pressure, schedule pressure on you to blast over the snow initially as fast as possible. Not smart, because you could fall, break some ribs on a tree and have to be flown home. So you got to be very careful you don't push yourself at first, yet jam on the dry trail when you can get it, and then get through Oregon. Now, of course, Oregon is August, so you should have a lot of dry trail. Oregon will hold its snow easily through July after a normal winter. So keep that in mind. Oregon, because it's flat, doesn't mean it's clear sailing. Now, if you have a heavy winter, get this. August 1st start. So August 1st, September 1st, Washington. September 1st to October 1st is Oregon. October 1st to November 1st is Northern California. Donner Summit, November 1st. You're starting the Sierra right when you really ought to be leaving the Sierra. So if you start late, if the Pacific Northwest gets a heavy winter, either get your skills together so you can start earlier, your steep snow skills, get equipped, right gear for safety, or you're going to be starting later and you're going to have to hustle. So that's a con. Now, that kind of gives you an idea of why I'm talking about certain time elements when I was talking about the pros. Yeah, fewer bugs, cooler time of year, and you'll potentially have fewer storms going southbound. That's kind of nice.